So think about the last massive enterprise project you were part of.
Oh, the ones with the endless kickoff meetings.
Right, exactly. You have the initial kickoff meetings, the perfectly formatted requirements documents, the color-coded spreadsheets,
And all those specialized software tools tracking every single ticket.
Yeah, exactly. And on paper, everything looks completely under control. I mean, it looks flawless.
Right.
So the big question for our deep dive today is, why do these massive, complex systems constantly fail? Or, require millions of dollars in rework before they even launch?
It is arguably kind of the great paradox of modern business. We are just swimming in tools for organization and governance.
Well, absolutely drowning in them.
Right, yet we consistently struggle to build systems that actually do what they are supposed to do. And the most expensive failures in enterprise software, they don't actually happen during delivery.
Really?
Yeah, they don't happen when developers are writing the code. They happen in complete silence months before the delivery phase even begins.
Okay, wait. A silent breakdown before the first line of code is even written.
Exactly.
I feel like if you're a developer or a project manager listening to this, you might be scratching your head a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Because usually, before delivery, you've got business analysts, enterprise architects, product owners. They're spending weeks, sometimes months, supposedly aligning on what needs to be built.
Well, they are aligning, but the thing is they are aligning in isolated silos. And the core issue we're looking at in our sources today, it revolves around this idea of fragmentation.
Fragmentation. Okay, break that down for me.
So in a modern organization, the business intent, which is really just the actual underlying reason why a system is being built, it's fundamentally shattered.
Shattered, like across different teams.
Across different teams and different mediums. So you have business requirements living in Word documents, right? And financial models in spreadsheets.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Then you have BPMN process models, basically the flowcharts of how the business runs, sitting in a totally different tool. You have user journeys mapped out on digital whiteboards, and then endless lists of agile user stories.
So the business analyst is living in a document, the architect is looking at a process map, and the product owner is just like managing a backlog of user stories.
Exactly. And they all think they're talking about the exact same system, but their actual work is completely disconnected.
Wow. So because of that fragmentation, the organization essentially loses coherence before the work is ever even handed off to the people actually building it.
Yes. By the time this fragmented mess hits a delivery tool, whether that's Jira for the dev team or, an enterprise architecture tool like Eris, the original meaning is just gone.
The intent is lost.
Right. And the consequence of that is massive rework, deep ambiguity, and broken traceability. The dev team ends up building a system that technically matches the written requirements, but it completely fails to solve the actual business problem.
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back a bit because companies are spending, tens of millions of dollars on application lifecycle management platforms.
Oh, ALM tools, yeah.
Right, ALM tools.
Yeah.
And they buy those specifically for traceability. So are you saying tools like Jira or Confluence are actually contributing to the failure?
Well, they aren't failing at storage.
Okay.
They are failing at coherence. And this is a really critical distinction that our sources highlight today, specifically looking through the lens of a platform called ALManac.
Right, ALManac.
Yeah, which was built to address this exact gap. Traditional enterprise tools are fantastic at storing artifacts. They capture the fragmentation perfectly, but they're essentially just storage engines.
Okay, it sounds a bit like having a massive, perfectly organized filing cabinet. The folders are immaculate, the labels are printed, everything is color-coded.
That's a great way to look at it.
But if you actually pull the files out and read them, they're written in totally different languages and they completely contradict each other.
Exactly. The cabinet itself doesn't care if the documents make sense together.
It just cares that they are filed in the right alphabetical order.
That analogy captures the problem perfectly. Traditional tools manage the structure, right? They don't manage the meaning. And that leads directly to the foundational philosophy we really need to explore today, which is structure is not coherence.
Structure is not coherence. Man, let's unpack that because it sounds simple, but the implications for how we work are massive.
They really are.
Because you can have a perfectly structured nonsense sentence. It can be grammatically flawless, the subject, verb, and object, but still mean absolutely nothing.
Yes, and applied to enterprise systems, just because your requirements are perfectly hierarchical, say, You have your high-level epics, and those break down neatly into user stories.
Right, and those break down into acceptance criteria.
Exactly. And just because your business processes are neatly mapped out with all the little arrows and decision gateways, that doesn't mean they logically compute when you actually put them together.
And this isn't just some abstract theory we're kicking around either. The sources we're analyzing point to ALManac as a real-world case study for this.
Yeah, it's a very mature platform.
Right. It represents a multi-million euro asset, backed by hundreds of thousands of lines of code. It was engineered specifically to tackle this exact illusion of structure.
It was.
But if it's not a storage tool like Jira, and, it's not a process mapping tool, what exactly is it?
Well, it's important to define it by what it replaces in the workflow. It sits right in that murky, high-risk pre-delivery phase.
Okay.
Right in the gap between when business analysis finishes and the architecture handoff begins.
The silent phase.
Exactly. The sources describe it as a coherence and orientation system. So if a typical enterprise tool is designed to automate your workflow, ALManac is designed to act as cognitive infrastructure.
Okay, cognitive infrastructure. I mean, that sounds great in a boardroom, but what does that actually mean on a Tuesday afternoon when I'm staring at my screen?
Fair question.
If I'm a business analyst, how does cognitive infrastructure actually help me?
It means instead of managing isolated files or like blocks of text, you are managing the logical connections between ideas.
Oh, interesting.
Think about how a code compiler works for a software developer.
Okay, yeah.
A simple text editor will let a developer type whatever gibberish they want. But a compiler actually checks the structural logic of the code, and it throws an error if it doesn't compute long before the software ever runs.
Oh, wow. So ALManac is conceptually doing that, but for human business logic before the coding even starts.
That is exactly what it's doing.
So it's a logic compiler for business requirements. That makes so much more sense.
Right.
But that brings up a huge technical question for me. If I write a code compiler, the rules of a programming language are strictly defined, right?
Yes, very strict.
But human language and business logic are incredibly messy. How on earth does a piece of software evaluate coherence without just, using some generative AI to hallucinate guesses about what the business wants?
That is the most important technical distinction here. It is not trying to magically understand your business domain through generative AI guesswork.
Okay, good. That would be a nightmare.
Total nightmare. Instead, it evaluates the actual quality of thinking that has been encoded into the model.
The quality of thinking.
Right. It looks for the structural symptoms of confused human reasoning using very specific heuristics.
Diagnosing human reasoning.
Yeah.
That is a wild concept. How does it physically calculate that? Like, what is it actually looking for?
So it generates a coherence score, say 72 out of 100, based on 5 very specific measurable dimensions.
Okay, let's break those down.
Sure. Let's start with intent completeness. It looks at a requirement node and checks the graph relations. Does this requirement actually connect to a business value node?
Give me an example of that.
Well, for example, if you've written down what a new software button should do, but there is no underlying "so that" clause linked to it, the why is entirely missing. It's orphaned intent.
Ah, and if you're a developer who gets handed a ticket with no why, you are essentially flying blind.
Exactly.
You'll build the button, but you won't know the context, which means you'll probably build it in a way that doesn't actually solve the user's problem.
You're just guessing at that point. So the next dimension is ambiguity.
Okay, but without AI, how do you measure ambiguity?
You look at structural constraints and formulation rules. Is the requirement clear and specific? Or does it lack the necessary semantic links that define its parameters?
I think I follow.
So if the language implies a condition but doesn't actually link to a specific business rule, that's a structural flag for ambiguity.
Oh, I see. It's catching the gaps in the logic tree.
Yes.
That's really smart. What's the third dimension?
Overlap. This is a huge one in large organizations. It basically scans the model to see if 2 different nodes are duplicating logic or mixing concerns.
Oh, man. If you've worked in enterprise tech, you have absolutely seen this happen.
Oh, all the time.
Team A builds a rule for customer onboarding, and Team B builds a rule for new user registration. And nobody realizes they are modifying the exact same database object until the whole system crashes in production.
And the reason nobody realizes it is because Team A is working in a Word document and Team B is working in Jira.
Right. The silos again.
Exactly. But because ALManac sits as an orientation layer above those tools, it spots the overlapping logic pointing to the same business object, which actually ties directly into the fourth dimension, which is glossary alignment.
I assume that means making sure everyone is actually speaking the same language.
Precisely. It checks against a centralized semantic graph. If your requirements use the term client, but your process models use the term customer, the system flags the semantic disconnect.
Because developers shouldn't have to guess if those two terms mean the same thing.
Exactly. And finally, there is traceability coverage. It actively hunts for broken links across the entire model.
Like what?
Like, did you map a business requirement to a process step but leave it completely disconnected from any actual user journey?
So it's not reading the content like a human, reading the sentences. It's analyzing the graph relations.
Yes, exactly.
It's looking for missing links, orphan nodes, and conflicting rules. That is a brilliant way to evaluate the quality of formulation. It exposes where the structure is weak before the delivery risk even materializes.
It shifts the entire focus of the pre-delivery phase from, are the forms filled out, to, does this underlying logic actually hold together?
But wait, if this system is constantly running deep diagnostics on thousands of requirements, business rules, and process maps, doesn't that just create another massive, unreadable dashboard?
You would think so.
Because my absolute biggest pet peeve in the enterprise world is dashboard fatigue. Whenever there's a problem, the solution always seems to be, throw more data at it, give me 50 pie charts, and generate more automated tickets.
Dashboard fatigue is paralyzing organizations today, and it's a trap ALManac deliberately rebels against. Yeah. This brings us to a really unique differentiator in their design philosophy, which is the battle of signal versus noise. Most tools equate visibility with volume.
They assume if they show you every single data point, you'll eventually figure out what's wrong.
Which never works, because when everything is flashing red, nothing is an emergency.
Exactly. It just becomes background noise.
The creators of this platform took the exact opposite approach. The interface provides a single point of truth. A simple glowing signal, often just a dot that is green, amber, or red, right in the header of the workspace.
Just a dot.
Just a dot. It immediately shows the state of the system.
No pie charts, no 50-page PDF reports, just a dot. That's kind of amazing.
It goes back to a metaphor used in the strategy notes, the lighthouse.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, a lighthouse isn't there to control the sea or steer your ship or give you a detailed topographical map of the ocean floor. It is simply a signal. It illuminates the rocks you're about to crash into. It gives you an orientation point.
There is a quote from the sources that I actually wrote down because it's so contrary to how the tech industry operates right now. It said, "Not everything needs more data. Some things need a signal."
It's so true.
We're just so obsessed with data hoarding that we forget what we actually need is clarity. We just need to know where to look.
And that signal tells you exactly where the illusion of structure is breaking down. If the dot turns amber, you click into it, and it isolates only the areas where the coherence is fractured.
Okay, let's ground this. Walk us through a concrete example. Put me in the shoes of someone using this on a real project. What does this look like in practice when that illusion of structure breaks?
Okay, let's look at the classic architecture handoff. Imagine it's a Friday afternoon.
Setting the scene, I like it.
You are the lead business analyst, and you are preparing to hand off 6 months of analysis to the delivery teams. You open up your current stack. Let's say it's a mix of Jira backlogs, Confluence pages, and some Eris process models.
And because I'm a really good analyst, everything looks flawless. The folders are neat, the hierarchies are perfect, the traditional ALM tools are giving me a green light because technically all the mandatory fields are filled out. I mean, I've done my job.
Right. The filing cabinet is perfectly organized. Under the old way of working, you hit approve. You hand this off, the delivery team starts coding, and 6 months and $2 million later, the architecture collapses because the underlying logic was inherently flawed.
That's the silent failure we talked about at the very beginning.
Exactly.
But this time, I'm using ALManac. What happens differently?
This time, before you hit approve, you look at the coherence layer. You look at that single signal, and instead of green, it's amber. The illusion breaks.
Oh, man. The moment of truth. What is the signal telling me?
Well, you open the coherence overview, and it shows you a score of 72 out of 100, and it pinpoints exactly why. It reveals that 12 of your key user stories are orphaned. They are missing actual business intent.
Yikes.
It flags that 14 of your business rules contain overlapping, duplicated logic that is guaranteed to cause database conflicts for the developers.
Okay, that's a lifesaver to know now.
And worst of all, it shows that traceability is completely broken right where the core user journey matters most. The process model tells the system to do one thing, but the written requirements are telling the system to do something entirely different.
So if I had handed that off, the developers would have received a process map and a list of requirements that were basically mutually exclusive.
Yes, they would have had to just guess which one was right.
That is terrifying. But because the system made this coherence visible before delivery started, I don't hand it off.
Right. You stop the line, you sit down with the stakeholders on Monday morning, you clarify the missing intent, you merge those overlapping rules, and you fix the broken semantic links.
You resolve the logic problem when it's just text and models,
Exactly.
which might cost me, what, a few hours or maybe a couple of days of meetings?
As opposed to discovering the contradiction during a €5 million rebuild 6 months down the line. ALManac doesn't help you build faster. It helps you build something that actually holds together.
Because speed in the wrong direction is just an incredibly expensive way to fail.
Perfectly said.
By acting as that logic compiler for business requirements, it provides the cognitive infrastructure needed to actually do pre-delivery systems thinking. I feel like anyone listening who has ever sat in a post-mortem meeting for a failed IT project, where everyone is pointing fingers but all the documents technically look correct, is nodding their head right now.
It perfectly explains the disconnect. It's not that we didn't have enough structure. It's that structure is not coherence.
That shift in perspective is what changes how an organization approaches complex transformation. It forces you to stop managing the artifacts and start managing the meaning.
Absolutely.
I want to reiterate that one core phrase because if you take away nothing else from this deep dive, take this. Not everything needs more data. Some things need a signal. We don't need more noise. We don't need more dashboards. We need lighthouses to show us where the logic is broken.
And as we wrap up today's exploration, I'll leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
Think about the biggest, most complex project you are working on right now, the one with the massive budget and the endless alignment meetings. If you were to strip away all the JIRA tickets, the neat folders, the color-coded spreadsheets, and the perfectly formatted documents, do you actually have a coherent logical system? Or are you just looking at a highly structured illusion?
Wow. The X-ray machine for your project might just be showing you what you want to see. Until next time, keep looking for the signal in the noise.